guys, it's Kat, and today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on teen pregnancy as a pregnant teen. I was super hesitant about making this, and honestly, I still am. I've been putting it off all day, and I've been putting it off my entire pregnancy, but I'm coming down to the final weeks of my pregnancy, and I was like, okay, I need to just make this. It's not because I didn't want to make this, but it's because I've been just like scared to make it, I guess, due to like the controversy and things surrounding it, the negativity surrounding it. I wanted to make sure I thoroughly talked about everything that I wanted to talk about in the best way to talk about it, if that makes sense, like wording it carefully, along with covering everything I wanted to talk about, and in a way that like wasn't too confusing all over the place. So I've spent months and months gathering all of my thoughts and compiling them and kind of just sorting them out. And I finally feel like I have a decent overview of it. I also kind of wanted to see if my thoughts would change as I got further along with pregnancy and just figure out what I'd learn. So yeah, I think now that I'm like 37 weeks pregnant, I have a good idea of what I want to say. I do want to give a disclaimer that I've learned all this from my personal experience, and in no way am I trying to bash anyone or put any negativity or judgment out there. I don't want to shame anyone, nothing like that. It's just simply what I've learned. So don't get offended by anything because it's not meant to be offensive. Another thing is, this is kind of a disclaimer I want to give about my channel. In no way am I trying to glamorize teen pregnancy. I guess it's part of the reason I wanted to make this, was to show that like it's not what I thought it was. And I wouldn't have found that out had I not been in my shoes. Like, I have friends that are teen parents, and I had this expectation of pregnancy and teen pregnancy and different things, and it turned out to be quite different than I expected, good and bad. But that's a different video. So I kind of will give you some background on me a little bit. I'll eventually make a video entirely on my story. I am not your typical teen. I've learned all this without being a typical teen. I have never been a typical kid. I grew up an only child with a single mom, so I spent a lot of time being either alone or with my mom and her friends, and not like partying or anything, but I just have always hung out with more adults. So I've been on the more mature side and have never fully enjoyed being a kid ever. Everyone used to tell me I was a little adult and that I like came out of the womb that way. And that's just how I have always been, I guess. Because I thought maybe it was because of how I was raised, but just me. So I did have expectations that I would be better at teen pregnancy, I guess. And I've definitely had some advantages because of who I am and like how I've been, as far as just being a little more put together than a typical teen. However, I'm still not mature as far as like, I'm not 25 mature. I'm not at that point in my life. I haven't been through everything. Like, I just graduated high school and I graduated early, so I wasn't even supposed to graduate yet, but I am typically more mature for my age. But obviously I'm gonna have my moments because at the end of the day I am 17. But I do still understand, and I do have my moments. I'm human too. I'm sure that's very apparent in my videos, but so let's get into this video. I'm sorry that's such a long intro, but I felt like all of that was quite important. I want to talk about why being pregnant when you're unprepared, when a baby's not like planned for, when just you're not completely stable, is hard. It's not just because someone's a teen. However, I will also talk about where the difference of being a teen is. I wrote all my thoughts down, so I'm going to glance at that so I don't get way off track. Teen pregnancy is typically so much more difficult and looked down upon because it's difficult, and due to the fact that when you're a teen, you typically need your parents or like your guardians, whatever, and they are also affected if you get pregnant when you're not completely independent and on your own. So I think that's where a lot of the negativity can come from, is just because it affects others. Teens typically aren't completely stable. They're not typically financially stable for themselves, let alone financially stable enough to have a baby. You're typically not fully mentally and emotionally stable, let alone prepared for a baby. I mean, truthfully, you can never fully prepare, but you're typically like even more unstable because you're figuring out yourself and finding yourself. You're also typically not in the most stable relationships, but I've seen teen relationships work out and I've seen adult ones fail. I've seen a lot of ideal situations not work out the way they should, and I've seen not ideal situations completely work out perfectly and people are happy in them. So it's not entirely on age. In your teenage years and kind of really going into your young adult years in general, that is a time where you're typically going to need to be selfish and a little more immature, so you learn and you grow and you develop a life for yourself, career for yourself, and like just find who you are and develop yourself, just like build yourself up. Adding a baby into the mix can be very difficult because you typically aren't going to be able to be selfish with a baby. You have to then put them first. So it can make it so much messier and so much harder to do all that and balance the two. However, again, it is maturity, not age. It's maturity and how you take to parenting though, because at any age you can be immature and unstable, and you just have to grow from it or not. But the point is, just because you're a teen doesn't mean you can't, and just because you're an adult doesn't mean you will. There's never a perfect time to have a baby, and you can never be fully prepared to have a baby or for the changes that it'll bring. There are definitely situations that are more ideal and things that help, like being more financially stable or in a healthy relationship. Whether that's in a healthy marriage or just a healthy relationship. There are unhealthy marriages and healthy marriages. There are unhealthy relationships and healthy relationships. So it's not exactly the title of it either. I think the issue with teens are just that it's expected for us to be more immature and selfish, because that's kind of like what the teen years are about. Whereas someone that is older is expected to be more put together. But that's not necessarily the case, and from what I've learned, you never fully are together. You just make do with wherever you're at. And that's by person and maturity and like just their outlook and perspective on life, not a number or title. Again, age is not exactly what matters, it's maturity. Yes, age does tend to come with maturity and wisdom, but some people mature and gain wisdom a lot faster than others, or at a much younger age. We'll get into why I say that in a minute, but I do want to say I'm not going to talk about the different preventative methods. Yes, there's birth control, there's just being abstinent. Is that the way you say it? Refraining from being sexually active. However, those aren't always effective, and they all have their own side effects and pros and cons. So that's like a personal choice. So like I don't really want to get into it because different things work for different people. So, however, pushing abstinence and making lust out to be such an unnatural thing for teenagers truly seems to only make things worse. Being mean about it and like just being so harsh about stuff and shaming and putting teens down about it, it just adds negativity to the situation, and there's a good chance it's going to push the teen to do exactly what you're wanting them not to do because you're being mean about it. And why would someone listen if you're gonna be mean about it? Like, that's not a very good method of persuasion. Now, I'm not saying to support a teen being sexually active. However, it's just unnecessary to shame them for it because it is a natural thing. Lust is a normal thing. Hormones raging when you're a teenager, like, it happens, it's human. Instead, it's important to educate teens on the different risks, the different things that can happen from it, different prevention methods, but not only that, but also how damaging being sexually active can be if you aren't ready. And I'm not talking about just pregnancy or diseases or anything like that. I'm saying like as a person, like emotionally, mentally. For an example, I wish somebody would have explained to me more than just the pregnancy and disease risk, but how much it affects you. How damaging it can be if you're not ready. Not shaming someone for wanting a normal human thing. Not saying you shouldn't do it just because there's a pregnancy or disease risk. Because honestly, when someone's in the moment, you're probably not even thinking about that. And those hormones are going to overpower any logical thinking. Ultimately, people are ready for sex at different ages too. So there's no exact time that someone is ready. And people tend to just do what they want no matter what. So it's better to at least be educated and fully educated instead of going into something blindly. But if someone's shaming you for something natural and making you feel bad about yourself, instead of educating you on how important it is to make sure you are ready, like, it just leads to unnecessary negativity and creates a bigger problem. In general, I think the negativity surrounding not only like teen pregnancy, teen parenting, or even just in general an unplanned pregnancy is just unnecessary. Like, parenting is hard no matter what. It takes a village to raise a baby. Adding more negativity is just not necessary. Like, once it's happened, and someone that isn't fully prepared needs more support, love, and just encouragement instead of negativity. Like, that's only going to make the situation worse. And then that leads to it being potentially damaging for the child who didn't even take part in this decision. So all that negativity is just unnecessary. Now, with all that being said, I definitely do not recommend getting pregnant, not only as a teen, but just in general if you're not prepared. It's just typically as a teen, you're probably not going to be ready. And that's normal. I've said typically a lot in this. And the reason I say that is because it's all a case-by-case matter. Different situations, different life circumstances. So this is just kind of like an in general thing. This can kind of be taken with a grain of salt. And keep in mind that this is just very generalized. Now, if you are purposely trying to get pregnant as a teen, I understand where you're coming from. If you are doing it because you want it to fix something, if you are trying to fill a void, this isn't just teens though, because this can happen with adults too. It's just really harshly looked upon when you're a teen. Again, like I said, I'll eventually tell my story and I'll kind of explain it in that, why I understand where you're coming from. No, this baby was not planned. It was not intentional. Definitely a surprise. So I will throw that out there. However, here's some things I want you to take into consideration before you intentionally have a baby. So if you are a teen, taking into consideration that your friends are probably not on the same path of life that you will then be venturing onto, and there's a good chance you will lose them, or you'll just drift because they're in a different stage of life. I mean, I have college friends and that still happened. So keep in mind that if you're still in school, high school, or even college, there's a good chance that you're gonna get some judgment for it, a lot more judgment than you'd probably get with being older. You're gonna get more judgment from your family, and in general, just a lot more judgment. And being in high school and pregnant, the immaturity that can happen within high school could be really hard. I don't know because I didn't go to a traditional high school, but from what I've heard from other teen moms that did, it's not very fun. That's something to take into consideration. If you're trying to fix a relationship with getting pregnant, there's a good chance that it'll honestly just heighten your problems. For an example, if you're fighting a lot and can't get along, imagine how much adding in a baby where you have to make even more decisions that you're potentially not going to agree upon, it's just going to make it so much messier. A baby can wreck a perfectly healthy relationship. And it's not the baby's fault, but it's like adding a baby into the mix can, let alone a not healthy relationship. If you aren't stable, your family and the people like around you are going to be affected by this decision. Take that into consideration as far as if you still live at home or something. There's a good chance they're also not going to be too happy about it, because if you aren't fully responsible for yourself and then you get pregnant, you now have to become fully responsible for yourself and this baby, or at least a parent typically should be. Think about your emotional, mental state, and if it's not decently stable, pregnancy can make that even worse. As far as like maybe self-image, people have different experiences with that. Me, it didn't really affect much of it. Some people do feel more confident, some people don't. Then it's also going to affect it after you have the baby. So it just in general isn't going to fix any of your issues. There's a good chance it can just make them messier. It can be really hard to become a stable, independent adult on your own, just being responsible for yourself, let alone adding a baby into the mix. That's another thing to consider. So to conclude that, I wouldn't recommend purposely getting pregnant if you are not ready for it, just because you're not ready for it and it's going to be difficult. However, if you are pregnant and you weren't prepared, just know that it will be okay. You will figure it out and you can do this. Parenting may be really difficult, but it's so worth it and it's such a beautiful gift. But like I said, it has its challenges. I'm gonna find out about those real soon here. I'm sure there's a lot that I'm not expecting because as prepared as I am, I don't think you can ever be fully prepared. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it wasn't too all over the place. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!